Good morning, day 20, and what I'm going to talk about is moving our children on from where I've talked about to this stage to really getting them to a thing called motor sensory integration, and that should be the norm for all children, where they can learn efficiently and they're confident from really 7, 8 years onwards. It is not going to happen before then. So rushing to fronted adverbials and all that garbage is garbage. Just makes no sense at all. The objective is to support children to the point where they have really good rounded development. And that should be the norm for the vast majority of children. And if it's not, we ought to have a really good action plan to support them either for life because they're never going to get there, or a good action plan to support them because they're a year late because something's gone wrong on the journey. It doesn't matter. What matters is by the time they're adults, they're independent and happy. Motor sensory integration, you have got to bring together your motor skills, your sound processing, your vision. All comes together. So we think about our reading for meaning, we're doing it. We can sequence things, we can time manage, we're not turning up habitually late. We can see pattern, we're good at sport, we can plan that sport, we have a sense of direction. It all comes together, and all our senses and motor skills have to work together in order for it to work. And there is no rushing to literacy, numeracy, or anything else. We have to develop the foundation skills. If we don't, we undermine the person for life. So, motor sensory integration. These are Japanese children. Japan, for children of 8 years of age, encourages them to learn to unicycle. That's what motor sensory integration looks like. You're upright, you've got terrific balance, you're planning ahead so you're not going to crash. You are managing to move your bilateral integration of motor skills, and all that balance and so on in your inner ear is working. All children at 8 years of age ought to be able to unicycle. And I would suggest Japan itself doesn't understand the issues children who fail to establish the skill are experiencing. They themselves are not going back and going, okay, why are some children struggling with this? So it's one of the skills that is really useful. I like my clients to be able to juggle with 3 balls. I don't think I can juggle with 3 balls and talk to you at the same time. But that's telling me the eyes are working across the midline, bilateral integration is there, I'm not getting any strange involuntary moves where when you start with 1 ball, you're fine, but when the second ball comes in, there's an involuntary throwing it forward. The person can really sequence their time management, everything's coming together. So a lot of physical things like skateboarding and so on, that 8+ ought to be coming together. So we ought to have all the development in place so we can do some really exciting things with children who are 8+, and we ought to be doing them. Performing without hesitation. I work with adults with stage fright, terrible performance anxiety, and what's happening is their motor skill, sound, vision haven't come together properly, or they've got some kind of retained reflex that's blocking it, or something. And so when they're getting on stage, yes, they can perform, but things tighten up and it creates incredible anxiety because there's gaps between their sound, their vision, their motor skills. We want to have people who can get up there and perform. There's not a pause, a gap, a chronic meltdown of anxiety. They can sequence what they're going to say. They don't need to go with a shed load of notes. They know they're away. Things like Indian dancers, I've said on other videos, not in this series, but you've got to be working with an external sound. You're sequencing to the other people around you. You are having to think where you are spatially. You're also moving all your limbs. You're moving your eyes. Tremendous integration. Same with singing. You've got to be able to control the sound you're producing and synchronize with the people around you. Sing in harmonies and so on. Acting the same. You're working with a whole range of people and you have to slot into it. Those skills ought to be accessible to all our children. Maths. I love abacus. Abacus is amazing. When children have been trained on abacus for 3 years and they've got binocular vision, they can visualize the abacus. They are able to do a thing called air abacus. They don't need the abacus anymore. They can visualize 18 columns of maths and they can do 18 columns of calculation. Fantastic human skill. Because when you can use your two eyes together to visualize pattern, and if you practice lots of pattern manipulation, you can do amazing things with maths. When you cannot visualize and you haven't got binocular vision, you haven't got bilateral integration, that is completely out of your skill range. It is like being blind. It is being brain blind. And we've got to bring all our children up to the stage where they are phenomenal. They love pattern and it's a joy. I love playing complex games with people and just the whole joy of seeing pattern. And it is a joy. It's very exciting when you can see it. And if you can't see it, it's frustrating. You feel excluded. When you read, the children should just disappear into the book. As a child, I mean, this represents my childhood. I wanted to be in the books. I was lost in Narnia. I was out there with Lucy, Mr. Thomas having tea. I was out there with, swallows and Amazons. I was absolutely immersed because my sound, my vision, my motor skills came together. My eyes just tracked along the text without hesitation. But actually, that's not the norm. It's not the norm for most children. And we've got to make it the norm. Not where we go, well, you've got to do a half an hour reading. Oh, it's got to be something you just dive into. Absolutely immersive. And that's not going to happen if your sound, your vision, your motor skills don't work together. And it's not going to happen really before 7 or 8 because you don't get that immersion. I don't care if your child is reading at 2. They are decoding. They are not really reading in the way that's completely immersive. And it's that immersion, that way you have to stop reading scary books at night because they are too scary. I speak from experience. And you're calm, you're confident. You have mastered things. You are literally a Jedi Knight. So I know with my own son, remember he was blind at 6, sighted by 8, 21, 22, whatever he is now. He can look at any problem and think, okay, I might not know the answer, but I know how to break it down so I can see the pattern. I can understand how to put it back together again. I can do anything. If I can do it with my child, you can all do it with yours. Most of your children are starting from a better point. So we want to get children to the point where they've really mastered motor skills, sound, vision. And they've mastered it to the point where they really are like Jedi Knights. They can really see. I put up memory games because one of the things you can often see when you ask people to play memory is they're not memorizing visually. They're going, apple, orange, banana, pear, apple, orange, banana, pear. That's fine, but it all falls apart come the exams because they can't just keep recalling the visual images they've memorized. I can recall the visual picture of my old O-level notes, my A-levels. I can't say my degree because I didn't work very hard. But if I want to drive around the country, I can just memorize the maps. I don't need a machine to tell me where to go. I don't need a machine to tell me if I need to take a detour. I can visualize how to do it. I can play games and I can visualize steps ahead where I want my strategy to go. I can visualize several moves ahead. And I'm not having to go apple, orange, banana, pear. So there's no anxiety. I get anxious if I'm bullied, but even that I can learn to control. And that's the level we want all our children to be at, So they go on learning, and they can do very much more complex learning post 9, 10 years of age. So we do need checks and controls. I honestly think we need a really rigorous national PE programme with very clear targets. And so children can't slip behind. And if they are, we're really getting to the bottom of why they're not developing. We need proper screening for sound processing. And again, if they're blocking, we want to discover why. And I think that will throw up a lot of issues about trauma, and we might remove a lot of intergenerational trauma issues, because sound does pick up a lot in the trauma department. We need to screen for binocular vision and visual processing, and again, that will link in with trauma, but we're going to move people to the point they really can use their senses. We need skills checklists. We do need to check children can see pattern. They can visualize. They've developed memory skills. And we can do that in a pretty fun way, because I largely work with toys and games and puzzles. The Happy Puzzle Company is my favourite online store. We need strategies to solve new problems, and children need to be given that skill set where they can see any new problem and think, okay, I don't know the answer, but I know how to break it down so I can find the answer, because we're going to face lots of new problems. And everything we do has to be fun and engaging, because everybody functions better when they're happy. And during the COVID lockdown in Britain, we've seen some pretty unhappy parents struggling with next to impossible inappropriate curriculum. Let's make it much, much more engaging. So in the coming days, we're going to go back and have a look at how to make motor skills work better, how to make sound processing work better, how to make visual processing work better, and to bring them all together. Thank you very much for listening, and I shall see you tomorrow. Goodbye.